Okay, so let's dive in. Welcome to the deep dives. This is where we take all the material you share with us, articles, notes, research, and we really dig through it. We try to pull out the key insights, basically give you a guided tour so you feel well informed. Today, we're looking into the visual music meditations by Patrice Joy. We're focusing just on the sources you sent over. We want to understand the principles, what they're supposed to do, and how the material suggests is using them in, well, different parts of life.
That's right. Our job here is pretty straightforward. Figure out what your sources say about these VMMs. Not just what they are, but how they're meant to work and where they might fit in personal growth, groups like classrooms, even family stuff. And importantly, we're sticking only to the material you provided.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious about this. The sources hint at a pretty unique way of doing things, like guiding people with these really vivid, colorful stories into these magical realms, they call them, and then adding things like light and gemstones. It sounds different. So how does the material you looked at actually frame the basics of this system?
Well, based on your sources, these visual music meditations, or VMMs, they're presented as a whole integrated system. It pulls from different therapeutic approaches. The main goal, as it's described, is really to help people get into states of deep relaxation and also to foster a better understanding of themselves, their inner world. And they do this by using really engaging, powerful imagery in these structured practices.
Okay. And the material also brings up getting into specific brainwave states. Can you tell us a bit more about the sources say on that? Why is that important here?
Yeah, the sources definitely put a lot of weight on different brainwave states. They talk about beta, that's our normal, everyday waking consciousness. But then there's high beta, which they link specifically to stress, feeling discomfort, being upset. Then moving down, alpha is described as a state of relaxation. And theta is even deeper, sort of a semi-conscious state. So the VMMs, with their colorful stories and vivid pictures, they're explicitly designed, according to the sources, to help people get into those lower frequency states, especially alpha. The idea seems to be that this helps individuals shift out of those more stressful, high beta states.
Oh, okay, I see. So it's presented as a technique almost for guiding your brain activity toward being calm and maybe more open.
Precisely. And the sources tie this straight into a core idea of the system, that all our thoughts, our feelings, even our actions, they all have energy. They actually make a pretty strong claim that energetically, it's just not possible to hold a detrimental, lower energy thought and an uplifting, constructive, high energy thought at the exact same time. So from that viewpoint, consistently practicing focus on elevating beneficial thoughts is seen as really key, vital for pushing out the detrimental ones and the kinds of outcomes they bring.
Okay, the whole energy follows thought idea. The sources also use an analogy, the mind as a computer. And they specifically mention neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. How does the material connect those two?
All right, that's a fascinating part. The sources describe how our minds take in information, sort of like programming a computer. They suggest the beliefs we adopt, especially the really deep ones, get kind of hardwired into our unconscious. NLP comes into the picture, as described in the material, as a way to bridge the gap, a bridge between our conscious awareness and that unconscious processing. It's presented as a tool within the VMMs to help spot and release unwanted patterns, thoughts, emotions, attitudes, and the actions that follow. And this connects tightly with that other idea you mentioned, the mind as a magnet.
Right, attracting things that match its state.
Exactly. Attracting energies and situations that resonate with whatever state is dominant. They even quote that common saying, the things we think about, we tend to bring about.
Apparently.
Your sources use that to really drive home the point, how the focus of our mental energy is seen as steering our life experiences.
So the VMM's vibrant imagery, those colorful stories we talked about, are they basically designed to feed constructive new pictures or programs into this mental computer to help rewrite or overwrite the detrimental core beliefs?
That's exactly the picture the sources paint, yes. They propose that by finding and swapping out those limiting or detrimental beliefs, a person can become more open, more receptive to the beneficial things in life. The material states pretty clearly that a person's thoughts directly shape their emotional state, their stress levels, their physical health, even how productive they are. So when the mind is intentionally filled with thoughts of, say, kindness, compassion, love, it's seen as naturally leading to actions that reflect those qualities, which, in turn, the sources suggest, draws in circumstances that foster harmony and healthy relationships.
It really sounds like a complete loop where changing the inner world is the main way to influence the outer experience. So given that framework, what specific benefits do your sources actually list for doing these visual music meditations?
Oh, the list in the source is quite long. It includes things like achieving deeper relaxation, boosting creative expression and visualization skills,
Mm-hmm.
also fostering more self-control and self-compassion, getting clearer on your own emotions and what's driving them, helping to release those really ingrained destructive attitudes, and even improving concentration and memory.
And the sources mentioned even bigger claims too, right?
They did. The material talks about elevating the vibratory levels of the personal energy field, like
Mm-hmm.
shifting towards higher, more beneficial frequencies. And it also claims VMMs can help with regulating issues associated with dyslexia and certain other brain dysfunctions. And quite significantly, they suggest VMMs might even help discourage bullying and possibly lessen some major societal problems.
Wow, yeah, those are definitely significant claims in the material. Okay, so besides NLP, what other therapeutic methods are mentioned as part of this VMM system?
The sources call out art therapy and color therapy specifically. Art therapy, for instance, it might involve drawing pictures inspired by the meditation imagery. And this process, according to the sources, is thought to help access inner thoughts and feelings, and also to improve communication, learning, reduce stress, and kind of promote more freedom and self-expression.
Okay. And color therapy, how does that fit in?
Right. This is where color and light really come into play. Color therapy, or chromotherapy as it's also called, is described in the sources as using the energy frequency of different colors. The aim is to enhance communication, improve focus, lessen discomfort, and help regulate sleep. The VMMs are said to use the energy of specific colors through visualization, through imagery, to help people let go of harmful feelings, and also to help bring about their most beneficial intentions. Each color is presented as having its own frequency, its own vibration, which is believed to trigger biochemical changes in the body, helping maintain energetic balance and cultivate harmonious emotional states. And the VMMs combine this color visualization with breath control too. The sources note that guided, relaxed breathing is presented as a way to calm the nervous system, potentially lowering blood pressure and heart rate.
And what about the gemstones you mentioned earlier? How do the sources explain their role?
Gemstone therapy is another natural method described in the sources. It's for supporting well-being using minerals and crystals. It's presented as an ancient practice for balancing the energy field and easing discomfort. The material suggests each gemstone has specific qualities. Some are described as calming, grounding, while others are seen as more stimulating, revitalizing. You might use them by, say, holding a specific gemstone during the meditation or one of the awareness activities.
So it's really a mix of different practices all woven together. The sources also touched on a spiritual side, mentioning chakras.
Yes, absolutely. The sources explicitly connect a spiritual aspect of the VMM system to teachings from Hindu and Buddhist traditions,
Yeah.
particularly about the body's energy field and the 7 main chakras. It's stated that keeping these energy centers clear of lower energy thoughts and feelings is directly linked to a person's overall well-being. The material points out that later VMMs, especially the ones called ceremonies, are built around these concepts. The stated goal there is helping people reach their full potential by working with these energy centers.
Okay, so with this blend of techniques and this underlying philosophy, how are these VMMs actually supposed to be used, practically speaking, especially in places like classrooms or maybe for helping with parenting?
Your sources offer quite a bit of detail on that, yeah. They really highlight how useful VMMs could be in classrooms or counseling. They're presented as good tools for sparking visualization and nurturing creativity. And the material stresses that the moral lessons embedded in the VMA stories are specifically designed to help cultivate things like kindness, self-compassion, empathy. They're also suggested for developing communication skills. The sources even note potential benefits for individuals described as having inverted personalities, or those on the autism spectrum, and also calming effects for hyperactivity or attention issues. It seems inverted personalities in this context refers to people who might struggle with typical social interaction or expressing their inner state outwardly.
Interesting. So using the VMMs as a kind of pathway to build important social skills and deeper self-awareness.
Exactly. The act of drawing the visualizations, for example, is suggested as a concrete way to gain perspective on emotions and interactions. And classroom discussions about the VMM content may be sparked by questions suggested in the material like, what details did you notice about the elf's clothes? Or how do you think the little dolphin felt then?
Okay.
Those are presented as ways to train focus, encourage talking, improve attention to detail, and boost sensitivity awareness in students.
And what about for parents? The sources specifically mentioned teaching successful living attributes. What does that mean in this context?
Yes, the sources are quite explicit there. They describe VMMs as an excellent, engaging tool for guiding children.
guiding them to develop attributes seen as crucial for navigating life well and building a life of well-being. Things like moral values, empathy, inner regulation, personal strength, self-awareness, and self-sufficiency. The material suggests using the imagery and the awareness activities within the family could be a really potent way to nurture healthy relationships right from the start, basically providing a shared language, a shared framework for talking about and practicing these beneficial qualities.
Is there a difference mentioned between the VMMs for kids and those for adults?
Yes, the sources do make a distinction. They clarify that the first 9 VMMs are primarily aimed at children, but the next 7 VMMs are specifically called empowerment ceremonies, and these are presented as being more appropriate for adults. Although the material also notes that older teens might find these later ceremonies helpful too, especially for dealing with modern challenges like bullying or cultural prejudice, because the stories in those meditations are described as having lessons about courage, hope, finding freedom, inner strength, self-respect, and unity. Oh, and they mention one specific VMM, the Divine Dancer, that one involves actual physical movement, and it's suggested is good for all ages, for enhancing both physical freedom and emotional expression.
Okay. And how are those later VMMs, the ceremonies, meant to be used by adults?
For adults, the sources suggest these later VMMs can help develop the inner strength and insight needed for tough life situations, including things like overcoming detrimental relationships. They're also presented as a way to make daily pressures and ongoing stress feel more manageable. Cultivating courage is a theme that comes up repeatedly, encouraged through specific VMMs. The idea is to inspire people to act with integrity, to stand up for themselves when needed, and using affirmations drawn from the VMMs is described as a way to consciously align your identity with these constructive, redeeming qualities, which the sources suggest helps build self-confidence and develop inner wisdom for character enrichment.
The sources also talked about awareness activities that go with each VMM. What are those about?
Right. Each visual music meditation comes with these companion awareness activities. According to the sources, they're specifically designed to help people integrate the meditation experience into their everyday lives. They often involve focusing your conscious attention on a specific beneficial quality linked to that meditation, like maybe cultivating joy or inner calm or gratitude. These activities often have practical suggestions like making list things you're thankful for, or different ways to show kindness, or maybe actively connecting with nature, or doing specific actions to release old detrimental beliefs like writing them down and then symbolically getting rid of the paper.
And these activities often incorporate the specific color and gemstone for that meditation too.
Yes, that's a common element described in the material. A typical structure, especially in the later VMMs, involves physically holding the gemstone for that VMM, visualizing its associated color light filling you up,
Right.
practicing deep, calming breaths, consciously relaxing, and then repeating a specific affirmation tied directly to the beneficial quality of that meditation. Examples given in the sources might be something like, I am filled with overflowing joy, or hope guides my thoughts and actions. Sometimes the material adds a little physical action at the end of the affirmation, like snapping your fingers while counting to 5.
Huh. It sounds like the awareness activities are meant to be a really concrete, structured way to actively practice the qualities explored in the meditation itself.
That's exactly how the source material presents it, yes.
Yeah.
They're framed as practical, actionable steps, designed to bridge the gap between the meditative state and real-world application. The ceremonies, the ones more for adults, tend to have more involved awareness activities. The sources describe one called the Circle of Life ceremony. That one involves invoking specific guiding energies and doing a breath ceremony using visualizations of different colored lights from earth, sky, sun, moon, stars. The stated purpose there is releasing old burdens or lessons and consciously dedicating your thoughts to inner clarity and purity.
Right. So we've covered quite a bit based on the material you provided about Patrice Joy's visual music meditations. We looked at how they're described as influencing brainwaves, the core ideas like mind as energy, mind as computer linked to NLP. The mix of therapies involved color, gemstone therapy, the chakra connection, and how they're suggested for use in different areas, classrooms, counseling, personal growth, and specifically for parenting skills.
Exactly. I think the central theme we pulled from these sources is that VMMs are presented as a toolkit. Tools for inner regulation, for understanding emotions better, and for actively building beneficial thought patterns. And according to the material, they do this through guided imagery, these specific awareness activities, and by working with various energies represented by colors, gemstones, chakras, and nature visualizations.
And just to reiterate, this whole discussion, this deep dive, was built entirely on the sources you sent us. The goal was to give you a focused but thorough look at what that material says about VMMs. highlighting the key takeaways for you to consider applying in your own life or areas you're interested in.
Precisely. So here's a final thought. Really stemming from that core idea in the sources. The mind is a magnet, and that notion that the things we think about, we tend to bring about. What might it really mean for you to deliberately, consistently steer your thoughts and feelings towards specific uplifting qualities? Qualities like the ones mentioned: joy, peace, inner strength. And thinking about those detailed awareness activities, the visualization, the breathing, the affirmations, how might those practical steps offer a reliable way for you to cultivate that kind of inner focus day to day? It's just something to ponder as you reflect on the material you provided for this deep dive.